My name is Courtney, and I am 31 years old. I work as a nurse at a community hospital, the kind of job where you give pieces of your heart to strangers every single day. 2 weeks ago, I stood in my empty apartment staring at a text message from my mother that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. She had just emptied her entire life savings to rescue my brother from his own mistakes. But when I needed her, when my life was literally on the line, she turned away as if I had never existed. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. Stay with me through this journey because the ending changed everything I believed about family and self-worth. I grew up in a modest house on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew each other's names, where kids played in the streets until the sun went down, and where families stuck together through thick and thin. At least that is what I believed when I was young. My father was a construction worker, a man with calloused hands and a gentle smile. He would come home covered in dust and sweat, but he always had energy left to play with me and my older brother, Derek. Those evenings felt magical, like our little family was protected from anything bad the world could throw at us. Then when I was 12 years old, everything changed. My father was working on a high-rise building downtown when the scaffolding collapsed. They told us it was instant that he did not suffer. But we suffered. Oh, how we suffered. My mother, Patricia, was only 46 then, suddenly a widow with 2 children to raise alone. Derek was 16, right in the middle of his rebellious teenage years, and I was 12, still young enough to need tucking in at night, but old enough to understand that our world had fallen apart. In the weeks after the funeral, I watched my mother transform. The grief carved deep lines into her face, but what I noticed most was how she clung to Derek. She would hold him for long minutes, stroking his hair, whispering that everything would be okay. She told me later when I was older that she was terrified Derek would go off the rails without a father figure. He needed her more, she said. He was at such a vulnerable age. I learned to make myself small. I learned to do my homework without asking for help, to pack my own lunches, to braid my own hair for school. When I scraped my knee or had a bad day, I would go to my room and handle it alone. My mother had enough to worry about with Derek. There is one memory that still stings when I think about it. I was 14, and there was a group of girls at school who had decided I was their target. They would knock books out of my hands, whisper cruel things as I walked by, and leave nasty notes in my locker. One day, they cornered me in the bathroom and cut off a chunk of my hair with scissors. I came home crying, holding the uneven strands in my hand. My mother barely looked up from the phone. She was dealing with Derek again. He had gotten into a fight at school and was facing suspension. When I tried to show her what had happened, she sighed and said, "Courtney, you need to be stronger. I cannot deal with this right now. Your brother needs me." That night, I cut my own hair to even it out, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The girl looking back at me seemed like a stranger. I made a promise to myself then. I would never be a burden. I would handle my own problems. I would be strong. As the years passed, the pattern became clearer. Derek seemed incapable of staying out of trouble. He barely graduated high school after being suspended multiple times. He dropped out of community college after 1 semester. He could not hold down a job for more than a few months before getting fired for showing up late or mouthing off to his boss. Each time Derek stumbled, my mother was there to catch him. She paid his rent when he got evicted. She settled his debts when creditors came calling. She drove to police stations in the middle of the night when he got picked up for drunk and disorderly conduct. Her savings account, the one my father had started for their retirement, became Derek's personal emergency fund. Meanwhile, I was quietly building my own life. I earned a partial scholarship to nursing school, and I worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. I took extra shifts at a diner on weekends and tutored younger students during the week. My hands were always tired from working and studying, but I never complained. When I graduated from nursing school with the highest GPA in my class, I called my mother excited to share the news. She said she would try to make it to the ceremony, but on graduation day, her seat was empty. Derek had gotten into some kind of trouble again. Something about owing money to the wrong people, and she had to help him sort it out. I walked across that stage alone, my name echoing in the auditorium while I searched the crowd for a face that was not there. I told myself it was okay. Derek needed her more. He was struggling, and I was doing fine. That was the story I repeated like a prayer, hoping that if I said it enough times it would stop hurting. The one person who saw through my facade was my grandmother Helen. She was my mother's mother, a sharp-eyed woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Grandma Helen had raised 4 children during hard times, and she could spot unfairness from a mile away. She would call me every Sunday evening, asking about my classes, my work, my dreams. She remembered the names of my professors and my coworkers. She asked about the patients I cared for and genuinely listened to my answers. One Sunday about a year before she passed, she said something that stayed with me forever. "Courtney, my sweet girl," she said, her voice warm through the phone line. "You deserve to be loved just as much as anyone else in this family. Do not let anyone make you feel otherwise." "You hear me, I hear you." "Grandma," I whispered, tears sliding down my cheeks. She sent me letters, 2 real handwritten letters, on lavender-scented paper. In them, she would tell me stories about her own youth, about the struggles she faced, and how she overcame them. She always ended with the same words. "Live for yourself, my darling. Do not wait for permission." 3 years ago, Grandma Helen passed away from cancer. She went peacefully surrounded by family and hospice care. I held her hand in those final hours, and she squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. "I left you something," she whispered. "Remember what I told you." After the funeral, I discovered what she meant. In her will, she left me her silver bracelet, the one she had worn every day since her own mother gave it to her. There was also a letter sealed in an envelope, with my name written in her shaky handwriting. The letter said many things, but the words I remember most were these. "You have spent your whole life being strong for everyone else. Now it is time to be strong for yourself. The love you give so freely to others, give some of it to yourself. You are worthy of it." I wore that bracelet every day after that. It became my talisman, my reminder that at least one person in my family had truly seen me. With Grandma Helen gone, I felt more alone in my family than ever. But I kept showing up. I kept calling my mother, kept sending birthday cards, kept making the 2.5-hour drive home for holidays. I even started sending money each month, a few $100s to help with bills, even though my mother never once said thank you. I told myself that one day things would change. One day, my mother would see me the way Grandma Helen did. One day, I would stop feeling invisible. I had no idea that the moment of truth was coming, and it would arrive in the most devastating way imaginable. Derek met Kevin at a bar about 5 years ago, and within a year, they were married. Kevin seemed like a stabilizing force at first. He had a steady job as an accountant, a calm demeanor, and what appeared to be infinite patience for Derek's volatility. For a while, my mother dared to hope that Derek had finally figured things out. I wanted to believe it too. At their wedding, a small ceremony in a rented garden space, Derek actually thanked me in his speech. He said he was ready to be a better person. My mother cried happy tears, and I let myself imagine a future where my brother and I could be close, where family gatherings would not revolve around his latest crisis. But old habits die hard, especially when they have deep roots. About 2 years into the marriage, Derek discovered online gambling. It started innocently enough, at least. That is what Kevin told me later. A few poker games here and there, small bets on sports. Derek said it was just for fun, a way to blow off steam after work. Then the losses started mounting. Derek chased his losses with bigger bets, convinced that the next hand would be the one to turn his luck around. He started hiding the extent of his gambling from Kevin, using credit cards, secretly taking out loans Kevin did not know about. Kevin found out eventually. He discovered the maxed-out credit cards, the threatening letters from collection agencies, the second mortgage Derek had somehow taken out on their condo without telling him. They fought constantly after that. Kevin begged Derek to get help to go to Gamblers Anonymous meetings to see a therapist. Derek promised he would, then did not follow through. The situation reached a breaking point when Derek borrowed money from people who did not send polite collection letters. These were the kind of people who communicated through intimidation and violence. The kind of people who do not file lawsuits. They file missing persons reports for the people who cross them. Derek owed them $120,000. One night in October, my phone rang at 2 a.m. I was in the middle of a rare deep sleep after a brutal 12-hour shift at the hospital. The sound of my ringtone pierced through my exhaustion like an alarm, and I fumbled for the phone on my nightstand. It was my mother, and she was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "Courtney," she gasped between ragged breaths. "It is Derek. He is in the hospital." "They beat him up, Courtney. They beat him so badly I did not recognize him at first." My heart dropped into my stomach. Who beat him up? What happened? The story came out in fragments punctuated by my mother's sobs. Derek had not been able to make a payment to the men he owed. They had sent a message, the kind of message delivered with fists and boots, and promises of worse to come. Derek was found unconscious in an alley behind a strip mall, his face swollen beyond recognition. 3 ribs cracked, his left arm broken in 2 places. They said, if he does not pay everything within 72 hours, they will kill him, my mother whispered. $120,000, Courtney. They want $120,000. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even as my hands shook. You need to call the police. This is extortion. These people should be in jail. No, she cut me off immediately. No police. Derek said if we involve the police, it will only make things worse. These people have connections. They will know, and they will go after him even harder. We just need to pay them and make this go away. I wanted to argue. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was insane, that paying off criminals would only empower them to do this again. But my mother was not listening to reason. She was listening to fear, and fear was telling her to do whatever it took to keep her son alive. Mom, where are you going to get $120,000? There was a long pause on the line. When she spoke again, her voice had a hollow quality to it, like she was already resigned to what she was about to do. I have $95,000 in my savings account, she said. Your father and I saved it over 20 years. It was supposed to be for retirement. And I can sell my car. The Toyota is still in good condition. I should be able to get $10,000 or $12,000 for it. And Lorraine, she might be able to help with the rest. I felt the room tilt around me. She was going to do it. She was going to drain everything she had, everything my father had worked for, everything that was supposed to secure her future. All of it for Derek. Again. A small, shameful part of me thought she would never do this for me. I pushed that thought down immediately, hating myself for even thinking it, while my brother lay in a hospital bed. Mom, are you sure about this? What will you live on? I will figure it out, she said with a determination that brooked no argument. I will get a job. I will downsize. Whatever it takes. He is my son, Courtney. I cannot let them kill my son. Over the next 48 hours, I watched from a distance as my mother dismantled her entire financial security. She withdrew $95,000 from her savings account money that had accumulated over decades of careful budgeting and sacrifice. She sold her Toyota Camry, the reliable sedan that my father had bought her as an anniversary present years ago, for $12,000 to a used car dealer who knew a desperate seller when he saw one. She called Aunt Lorraine in Florida, her younger sister, and asked for $15,000. Lorraine was not wealthy by any means. She was a retired school teacher living on a fixed income. But she loved her sister, and she could not say no when Patricia begged through tears. By the end of the second day, my mother had gathered $122,000, enough to pay off Derek's debt and cover some of his hospital bills. She called me when it was done, and there was a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief in her voice. "I did it," she said. "I paid them. Derek is safe. Everything is going to be okay now." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "That is good, Mom. I am glad he is okay. But what about you? What are you going to live on now? I will manage," she said dismissively. "The important thing is that your brother is safe. He promised me he is going to change. He is going to get help for the gambling." This was a wake-up call. I had heard those promises before. Derek was always going to change, always going to do better, always one more chance away from becoming the person my mother believed he could be. But I did not argue. There was no point. My mother had made her choice, the same choice she had been making for the past 19 years. Derek came first. Derek always came first. As I hung up the phone, I tried to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. My mother had just sacrificed everything she had for my brother. Her retirement, her car, her financial security, all of it gone to clean up his mess. A question crept into my mind, unbidden and uncomfortable. If I were in trouble, would she do the same for me? I told myself the question was unfair. I would never put myself in a position like Derek's. I was responsible. I was careful. I would never need to be rescued. But still the question lingered. My life in Cleveland was nothing like the chaos that seemed to follow my brother. I had built something stable and meaningful for myself, brick by careful brick. I rented a modest one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors waved hello, and the biggest excitement was the annual block party. My job at the community hospital was demanding but fulfilling. 7 years of nursing had taught me how to stay calm in emergencies, how to comfort frightened patients, and how to find joy in the small victories. A patient who finally ate solid food after weeks on tubes. A child who smiled through their fear of needles. An elderly man who held my hand and told me I reminded him of his late wife. The work was hard on the body and the heart, but I loved it. My colleagues had become like family to me. Denise, another nurse in my unit, had been my closest work friend for 5 years. We shared coffee breaks and complaints about difficult physicians, and dreams about what we would do if we ever won the lottery. And then there was Marcus. We met at a friend's birthday party 2 years ago. He was standing in the corner looking slightly uncomfortable, nursing a beer, and watching the chaos of the dance floor with an amused expression. I was doing the same thing from the opposite corner. Our eyes met, and we both laughed at ourselves. He walked over and said, "I am guessing you are also here, because you could not think of a good excuse not to come." I liked him immediately. Marcus was an engineer, the kind of person who approached problems methodically and saw solutions where others saw obstacles. He had kind eyes and an easy laugh and absolutely no drama in his life. After Derek, the absence of drama felt like a breath of fresh air. We took things slow, getting to know each other over coffee dates and long walks and late-night phone conversations. When we finally made things official, it felt less like a beginning and more like a recognition of something that had always been inevitable. By the time my mother was emptying her savings for Derek Marcus, and I had been together for 2 years. He had met my family only a handful of times, brief visits, where my mother asked polite questions, but never seemed to remember his answers. He had seen enough to understand the dynamics at play, though he was always careful not to criticize directly. We had started talking about the future. Marriage was on the horizon, maybe a spring wedding the following year. He had met my apartment lease renewal with a suggestion that we look at places together instead. I had started imagining a life with him, a stable and loving partnership, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. I had about $15,000 in my savings account. It was not a fortune, but it was the product of years of careful budgeting. I had sacrificed small luxuries and watched every penny determined to have a cushion for emergencies. That money represented my security, my independence, my proof that I could take care of myself. 3 weeks after my mother paid off Derek's debt, my life shattered. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was driving to work for a night shift. The roads were slick with autumn rain, and I was being careful keeping my speed down and my eyes on the road. The intersection I approached was one I crossed every day, so familiar that I could navigate it in my sleep. The light turned green. I pressed the gas and started through the intersection. I never saw the truck. Later witnesses would tell police that it ran the red light at full speed, probably 45 miles per hour. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel, exhausted from driving straight through from Nebraska without proper rest. The impact hit my driver's side door with a force that felt like the world exploding. I remember the shriek of metal, the spray of glass, and then nothing. I woke up in the hospital where I worked, surrounded by familiar faces that looked unfamiliar through the haze of pain and medication. My pelvis was fractured in 2 places. 2 of my ribs were cracked. But the worst news came from the spinal specialist who visited my room on the second day. "You have damage to your lumbar spine," he explained, his voice gentle but serious. "The impact caused a herniated disc that is pressing on your nerve roots. You need surgery, Ms. Courtney. Without it, you risk permanent partial paralysis." The word paralysis echoed in my head long after he left the room. I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what he was telling me. I was 31 years old. I was a nurse. My entire career depended on my ability to move, to stand for long hours, to lift patients, to respond quickly in emergencies. If I lost that ability, I lost everything. Marcus was there every day after work, holding my hand and reading to me and doing everything he could to keep my spirits up. The hospital staff treated me like one of their own, which in many ways I was. Denise organized the unit to bring me flowers and cards, and the terrible hospital cafeteria pudding that we always joked about, but secretly loved. But the bills kept piling up. The surgery I needed was specialized, requiring an expert in spinal procedures. The total cost was estimated at $45,000. My insurance would cover $20,000, leaving me with a gap of $25,000. I used my entire savings to cover the initial costs. $15,000 gone in an instant, and I was still $25,000 short. Marcus offered to sell his car. It would bring maybe $8,000. He had just bought a house, stretching his finances thin, and his credit was not in a position to take on more debt. His parents, who I had never even met, offered to lend $5,000 when he called to tell them what happened. It was not enough. I needed more, and I needed it fast. Every day of delay increased the risk of permanent damage. There was only one option left, one I had never exercised in my entire adult life. I had to ask my mother for help. The night before I made the call, I lay awake staring at the hospital ceiling. I held Grandma Helen's silver bracelet, turning it over in my fingers, feeling the worn metal smooth against my skin. I thought about her words. "You are worthy of being loved." I had never asked my family for anything. Not money for college, not help with rent, not support when I was struggling. I had prided myself on my independence, worn it like armor against the reality that my family simply did not prioritize me. But this was different. This was my ability to walk. This was my career, my future, my life. Surely, when the stakes were this high, my mother would be there for me. I picked up my phone and dialed her number, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my fractured ribs. The phone rang 3 times before my mother answered. Her voice was casual, unsuspecting. "Hello, Courtney. How are you, Mom? I need to tell you something. I was in an accident." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Oh no. Are you okay? What happened?" I told her everything. The truck running the red light, the impact waking up in the hospital, the fractured pelvis, the cracked ribs, the damaged spine. I told her about the surgery I needed, about the surgeon who said I risked partial paralysis without it. My voice cracked as I explained the financial situation, how my savings were gone, how I was still $25,000 short. When I finished, there was silence on the line. I could hear my mother breathing, could almost hear her thinking. "Courtney," she finally said, and her voice had a careful quality to it. "You know I just spent everything I had on your brother." "I know, Mom. I know, and I am not asking you to empty your accounts again. I just need some help. Even $10,000 would make a difference." Marcus and his family are contributing what they can. I have colleagues doing a fundraiser. I am trying everything. But I need my family too. More silence. When she spoke again, her words cut through me like a scalpel. Honey, you have Marcus. Cannot his family help more? And you have always been so good at handling things on your own. I do not really have anything left to give. I felt something crack inside me, something deeper than bones. Mom, I might not be able to walk. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Without this surgery, I could be paralyzed for the rest of my life. I understand, she said, but her voice sounded distant, like she was reading from a script. And I feel terrible about it. But I just do not see what I can do. You have always been so capable, Courtney. You will figure this out. You always do. The words "you always do" hit me like a second collision. All my life being capable had been my defining trait in my mother's eyes. I never needed help. I never caused problems. I never demanded attention. And now that very capability was being used as a reason to deny me support. Mom, I said, and I was crying now, tears sliding down my cheeks and dampening the hospital pillow. I have spent my entire life not asking for anything. I work 2 jobs to pay for college. I send you money every month. I have never once asked you for help. And now, when I am literally at risk of losing the ability to walk, you are telling me to figure it out. She sighed a long, exhausted sound. Courtney, please do not make this harder than it has to be. Your brother nearly died. I had to save him. You would have done the same thing. Would I thought, but did not say. Would I have sacrificed everything for someone who repeatedly made the same destructive choices? Let me think about it, my mother said. Maybe I can talk to Lorraine again. I will call you back. She did not call back. Not that day, not the next. I sent text messages that went unanswered or were answered with brief dismissals. I am busy right now. I will call later. Still thinking. On the 3rd day, I called Derek. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice wary. Hey, Courtney. What is up? I told him about the accident, about the surgery, about the money I needed. I told him that Mom had just spent everything to save him. And I understood that. But maybe he could talk to her advocate for me, help me get just a portion of what I needed. His response was a cold shower. Look, he said, and his voice was clipped impatient. I just went through something really traumatic. I am trying to put my life back together here. I am not in a position to help anyone right now. And honestly, you have always been the together one. I am sure you will land on your feet. Derek, I said slowly, Mom gave you $120,000 2 weeks ago. I am asking for $10,000. I am asking so I can walk. He laughed a short, bitter sound. That money was to save my life. It is not like I have it sitting around to give away. I am sorry about your accident, but I have my own problems. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, the screen going dark in my hand. My own brother, the one I had watched my mother sacrifice everything for, could not be bothered to advocate for me, could not even stay on the phone long enough to hear me out. I called my mother one last time. This time she answered immediately. Mom, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. I need to ask you directly. If I were Derek, if I was the one who owed money to dangerous people, would you have sold your car and emptied your savings for me? There was a long pause. When she spoke, her answer broke something fundamental in my understanding of my own family. Courtney, your brother is different. He does not have anyone else. He has always needed me more. You have Marcus. You have your career, your independence. You have always been able to take care of yourself. Derek cannot survive without me. But I cannot survive without this surgery, I whispered. She sighed. You are being dramatic. You have resources. You have people helping you. You will find a way. I believe in you. The words "I believe in you" sounded hollow. They were not faith. They were a dismissal dressed up as encouragement. My mother did not believe in me. She simply did not want to help me. There is a difference. Okay, Mom, I said. I understand. Good, she replied, relief evident in her voice. You will get through this. Call me when you are feeling better. She hung up and I let the phone fall onto the hospital bed beside me. Marcus found me like that an hour later, staring at nothing, my face wet with tears that had long since stopped flowing. He did not ask what happened. He could see it in my eyes. He just climbed onto the narrow hospital bed beside me, wrapped his arms around me carefully, and held me while I shook. That night, I looked at the last text message from my mother. You will be fine. I know it. The words blurred on the screen as fresh tears welled up. I realized something terrible in that moment. My mother was not saying she believed in my resilience. She was saying she did not want to be bothered with my problems. She was giving herself permission to look away. I deleted the message. Then I deleted the entire conversation. For the first time in my 31 years, I allowed myself to admit the truth I had been running from my whole life. In my mother's eyes, I had never been a priority. I had been the easy child, the one who did not require attention, the one who could be safely ignored, while she focused on Derek. And because I had never demanded to be seen, she had never learned to see me. That night alone in the hospital bed, I felt more isolated than I had ever felt in my life. My family had turned their backs on me, and I had no idea what to do next. The first light of hope came from an unexpected place. Marcus had been on the phone with his parents in Texas every day since my accident. I had never met them, had only heard their voices through video calls where they waved and smiled, and asked Marcus when he was going to bring me down for a visit. They were retired, living comfortably, but not extravagantly, the kind of people who had worked hard their whole lives and were now enjoying the fruits of their labor. When Marcus told them what had happened about the accident and the surgery, and my family's refusal to help, they did not hesitate. They called me directly. Marcus's mother, whose name was Dorothy, had a warm Southern accent that reminded me of honey and summer afternoons. His father, Robert, was quieter, but no less kind. Courtney, Dorothy said, we know we have not met you in person yet, but Marcus talks about you all the time. He loves you, and that means you are family to us. We want to help. I tried to protest. They did not know me. They had no obligation. This was too much to ask of strangers. But Dorothy stopped me. Honey, you are not asking. You are not. We are offering. There is a world of difference. Our son loves you, and you are in trouble. That is all we need to know. They sent $5,000 the next day. It was not a loan. It was a gift. The note that came with the transfer said, "Get well soon. We cannot wait to meet you in person." I cried when I read it. These people who had never met me were willing to help when my own mother would not. The contrast was almost too painful to bear. Marcus sold his car that same week. It was a practical sedan, nothing fancy, but he loved it. It represented his independence, his first major purchase after landing his engineering job. He got $8,000 for it. When I told him he did not have to do this, he looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Courtney, you are going to be my wife. That means your problems are my problems. I would sell everything I own if it meant you could walk." But the $13,000 from Marcus and his parents still was not enough. I was still $12,000 short. That was when Aunt Lorraine called. She was furious, not at me, but at my mother. Apparently, word had gotten around the extended family about my accident, and someone had mentioned to Lorraine that Patricia was not helping. Courtney Marie Lorraine said, her voice sharp with indignation, "Please tell me the rumor I heard is not true. Please tell me my sister did not actually refuse to help her own daughter when she might be paralyzed." I told her everything. The accident, the surgery, the calls to my mother and Derek, the excuses, and the silence. That woman Lorraine muttered, and I could hear her pacing. "I swear that woman has been blind to you your whole life. I saw it when you were a child." I told her, but she would not listen. Derek this, Derek that. And you always in the shadows, always taking care of yourself because no one else would. She paused. How much do you need? 12,000, I admitted. Maybe a little less if the fundraiser keeps growing. I just gave my sister $15,000 to bail out that no good nephew of mine, Lorraine said. And you know what? I would give you double that if I had it. But I have 7,000 I can spare. It is yours. Aunt Lorraine, I protested. You just gave Mom so much. You cannot afford this. I am retired, not dead, she shot back. I have some investments I can liquidate. And frankly, helping you is a much better use of my money than watching it disappear into Derek's gambling debts. I should have given it to you in the first place. She sent the money by the end of the week. With it came a note. Your grandmother would be proud of the woman you have become. I know I am. The final piece of the puzzle came from my colleagues at the hospital. Denise had organized a GoFundMe campaign without telling me, posting my story along with photos from better days. She shared it on social media, sent it to everyone she knew, and encouraged others to spread the word. In 2 weeks, they raised $4,000. Some donations came from coworkers, others from patients I had cared for over the years. Strangers who had never met me contributed $10 or $20 because my story moved them. The head of my department, Dr. Patterson, called me personally. Courtney, he said, we are going to make this work. I have talked to the surgical team, and they have agreed to reduce their fees. You are one of our own. We take care of our own. I was overwhelmed. All these people, some of whom barely knew me, were coming together to help save my ability to walk. Meanwhile, my own mother and brother had not even sent a get well card. The most moving contribution came from an unexpected source. About a week before my surgery date, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. The return address was unfamiliar, but the handwriting was shaky and elderly. Dear Nurse Courtney, the letter began. My name is Eleanor. You probably do not remember me, but you took care of me 3 years ago when I had my hip surgery. I was alone, scared, and convinced I was going to die. But you held my hand and talked to me and made me feel like I mattered. I was recently told about your situation by a friend of a friend. I am not a wealthy woman, but I have some money put aside, and I cannot think of a better use for it than helping the angel who helped me. Enclosed was a check for $1,000. The letter continued. When I was in that hospital bed alone, you were the only person who treated me like family. Now it is my turn to do the same for you. Please get well. The world needs more people like you in it. I held that letter and wept. A woman I barely remembered, someone I had cared for as part of my job, had reached out to help me when my own blood relatives would not. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning. By that point, I had enough money to cover the costs. The breakdown looked like this. Marcus and his family had contributed $13,000. Aunt Lorraine had given $7,000. The GoFundMe had raised $4,000. Eleanor's check added another $1,000. And the hospital had reduced their fees enough to cover the remaining balance. I went into that operating room carried by the love of people who chose to care about me, not people who were obligated to by birth. The surgery lasted 6 hours. I remember nothing of it, just the bright lights of the operating room and the kind eyes of the anesthesiologist telling me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before the world went dark. When I woke up, Marcus was there. So was Denise. My room was filled with flowers, cards, and balloons from colleagues, patients, and strangers who had donated to my cause. My mother had not called. Derek had not texted. My family of origin was completely silent, but I was surrounded by my family of choice. And for the first time, I understood the difference. Recovery was a slow process. The surgeon told me the operation had been successful, but healing would take time. I would need months of physical therapy to rebuild strength in my legs and core. I would need patience and determination and a willingness to push through pain. Those first weeks were brutal. Every movement hurt. Simple tasks like getting out of bed or walking to the bathroom felt like climbing mountains. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the progress seemed so slow that I wondered if I would ever return to normal. Marcus was there every step of the way, He rearranged his work schedule to be home during the day. He drove me to physical therapy appointments, cheered me on during exercises, and held me when the frustration became too much to bear. His parents called weekly, checking on my progress and reminding me that I had people in my corner. Aunt Lorraine sent care packages from Florida. Books, puzzles, cozy socks, herbal teas. Each box came with a note. Thinking of you. Keep fighting. My colleagues at the hospital rotated visits. Denise brought gossip from the unit and contraband cookies that violated my physical therapist's dietary recommendations. Dr. Patterson stopped by to tell me that my position was secure for as long as I needed. During those months of recovery, I had time to think. Lying on my couch or walking slowly around the block, I reflected on my life, my relationships, my beliefs about family and love and obligation. I reread the books Grandma Helen had given me over the years, dog-eared paperbacks full of her marginalia. In one, she had underlined a passage. Love freely given is the only love worth having. Everything else is just transaction. I thought about my mother, about the countless times I had shown up for her, sent money, made the drive for holidays, put her needs ahead of mine. I had been giving freely for 31 years, but what had I received in return? I thought about Derek, about the resentment I had always pushed down, telling myself it was wrong to be jealous of my own brother. But was it jealousy? Or was it the simple recognition that I was being treated unfairly? I started seeing a therapist, a gentle woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in family trauma. In our sessions, I unpacked decades of pain that I had never allowed myself to acknowledge. The missed graduations, the unanswered calls, the way my mother's eyes would slide past me to find Derek, the constant message delivered in 1,000 small ways that I was not worth prioritizing. It was not easy. There were sessions where I cried until I had nothing left. Sessions where I raged at the unfairness of it all. Sessions where I sat in stunned silence, finally seeing patterns that had been invisible to me my whole life. But slowly, something began to shift. I started to understand that my mother's inability to love me equally was not my fault. I had done nothing wrong. I had simply been born into a family with limited emotional resources, and those resources had been unequally distributed. It was not my job to earn my mother's love. It was her job to give it freely. And if she could not do that, then I had a choice to make. 3 months into my recovery, I was walking without assistance. My strength was returning. The surgeon was pleased with my progress and predicted a full recovery within another few months. That was when my mother called. Her voice sounded exactly the same as always, as if nothing had happened. "Courtney," she said cheerfully, "I have not heard from you in a while." "How are you doing?" I stared at the phone, momentarily speechless. She had not called once during my surgery, had not texted to ask if I survived, had not sent a card or flowers or any acknowledgement that her daughter had nearly been paralyzed. And now 3 months later, she was calling to chat. "I am recovering from spinal surgery," I said flatly. "The one I told you about, the one that could have left me paralyzed." "Oh yes," she said breezily. "I figured you would be fine. You always land on your feet. Anyway, the reason I am calling is that my birthday is next month. I was hoping we could all get together. Derek and Kevin will be there. I thought it would be nice to have the whole family." I felt something harden inside me, something that had been soft and hopeful for 31 years, always waiting for my mother to finally see me, finally chose differently. That softness crystallized into clarity. "I will think about it," I said. I spent the next few weeks considering what I wanted to do. Marcus and I talked about it late into the night, weighing options, discussing consequences. Dr. Chen helped me work through my feelings in therapy. Aunt Lorraine, when I called her, gave me her blessing to do whatever I needed to do for my own well-being. In the end, I decided to go to my mother's birthday. Not to reconcile, not to pretend everything was fine, but to finally speak my truth. Marcus came with me. The drive to Columbus took 3 hours, and we talked the whole way. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, reading from notes I had written and rewritten over the past week. My hands shook, but my voice did not. My mother's house looked the same as always. The same yellow siding, the same white shutters, the same garden where my father used to grow tomatoes. Walking up to the front door felt like approaching a threshold between my past and my future. Derek and Kevin were already there when we arrived. Derek looked healthier than I expected, the bruises from his beating long since healed. He barely glanced at me when I walked in, too focused on showing Kevin something on his phone. My mother hugged me, a brief perfunctory embrace. "You look good," she said. "I knew you would bounce back." The dinner was awkward. My mother talked about neighborhood gossip and her book club. Derek complained about his new job. Kevin sat quietly pushing food around his plate. Marcus held my hand under the table, a steady anchor. After the meal, before the birthday cake was brought out, I stood up. "I have something I want to say." My mother looked up surprised. "Courtney, we are about to do cake. This cannot wait," I said. "It has waited too long already." The room went quiet. I could feel Derek's eyes on me, suspicious. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. My mother's expression flickered between confusion and irritation. I took a breath and began. "Mom, 7 months ago, I was in a car accident. A truck ran a red light and hit me at 45 miles per hour. I broke my pelvis. I cracked my ribs. I damaged my spine so severely that doctors said I might never walk again without surgery." My mother opened her mouth to speak. I held up my hand. "Please let me finish." She closed her mouth. "When I was lying in that hospital bed, terrified and in pain, I called you. I asked for help. Not all of it, just some, because I knew you had just given everything to Derek. I understood that. I did not expect you to match that amount. I just wanted to know that I mattered enough for something." My voice cracked, but I kept going. "You told me I would figure it out, that I always land on my feet, that I had Marcus and my job and my independence. You said Derek needs you more because he does not have anyone else. But Mom, I needed you too. For the first time in my adult life, I needed my mother, and you told me to handle it myself." Tears were sliding down my cheeks now, but I did not wipe them away. "Do you know who helped me, Marcus, who sold his car? His parents, who I had never even met, who sent $5,000 to a stranger because their son loved her. Aunt Lorraine, who had just given you $15,000, but scraped together another $7,000 for me. My colleagues at the hospital, patients I had cared for years ago. A retired woman named Eleanor, who sent me $1,000 because I held her hand when she was scared." I looked at Derek, who was staring at the table. "I called you too, Derek. I asked if you could advocate for me with Mom. You told me you had your own problems and hung up." I turned back to my mother. "I have spent my entire life being the easy child, the one who does not cause problems, the one who takes care of herself. I thought that if I was good enough, if I never asked for anything, if I showed up and helped, and gave without demanding, eventually you would see me. Eventually, you would love me the way you love Derek." I shook my head. But I understand now. The problem was never that I was not good enough. The problem is that you do not know how to love us equally. Maybe it is something in you that was broken long before I was born. Maybe losing Dad shattered something you could never put back together. I do not know. And honestly, it does not matter anymore. My mother was crying now too. Derek looked uncomfortable. Kevin had quietly left the room. "I am not here to yell at you or to punish you. I am here to tell you the truth and to set boundaries for myself. Because I deserve to be loved, Mom. I deserve to be prioritized sometimes. And if you cannot give me that, then I need to protect myself from the pain of always being invisible to you." I reached into my purse and pulled out a wrapped gift, the birthday present I had bought weeks ago. "Here is your birthday present. It is probably the last gift I will give you, at least for a while. I am going to step back from this family. Not because I hate you, but because I need to heal. I have been wounded by your choices my whole life, and I never let myself feel it. Now I am feeling it, and I need space to recover." Derek finally spoke up. "That is pretty dramatic. Do you not think walking in here and making Mom cry on her birthday? I looked at him steadily. Derek, you have made Mom cry 100 times with your choices. The difference is she always forgave you. She always showed up for you. All I am doing is telling the truth and you call it dramatic. That says more about you than it does about me. He had no response. I turned to my mother one last time. I love you, Mom. I probably always will. But I am done begging for scraps of your attention. I am done being the background character in the story of this family. I am going to go build a life with people who choose me, who value me, who show up when I need them. I picked up my purse. Marcus was already standing by the door ready to leave. My mother reached out. Courtney, wait. Please, let us talk about this. I think I have said everything I need to say, I replied. Maybe someday things can be different between us. But that is going to require you to do some work on yourself. And I am not going to hold my breath waiting. I walked to the door, then turned back. Happy birthday, Mom. We left. On the drive home, I did not cry. I felt something I had not felt in years. Peace. A year has passed since that birthday dinner. My life looks different now, different in ways I never could have imagined. I returned to work at the hospital 6 months ago. The first day back, my colleagues threw a surprise party in the break room, complete with a banner that read, "Welcome back, Courtney." Denise hugged me so tight, I joked that she was going to put me back in the hospital. My relationship with my patients has deepened. Having been a patient myself, having felt the vulnerability and fear of lying in a hospital bed uncertain of the future, I bring a new level of empathy to my work. I hold hands more often. I listen more carefully. I never forget that behind every chart and diagnosis is a human being who needs to be seen. Marcus and I got engaged 3 months ago. The proposal was quiet and perfect on a beach at sunset during a vacation to visit his parents in Texas. I finally met Dorothy and Robert in person, and they wrapped me in hugs like I had always been part of their family. The wedding is planned for next spring. It will be small, just close friends and chosen family. Aunt Lorraine has already announced she is coming from Florida, and she has threatened to give a toast that will embarrass us both. My relationship with my mother and Derek is exactly as I said it would be. Distant. We exchange polite text messages on holidays. I no longer send monthly checks. I do not make the drive for every family gathering. About 4 months after the birthday confrontation, I received a letter from my mother. Not a text message, but an actual letter written in her careful handwriting. It was not quite an apology. My mother has never been good at direct apologies. But it was an acknowledgement. She wrote about feeling overwhelmed after my father died, about the fear that consumed her whenever Derek got in trouble, about how she relied on my independence so she could focus on the child she thought needed her more. Maybe I leaned on you too much, she wrote. Maybe I forgot that even strong people need support sometimes. I do not know how to fix what is broken between us, but I want you to know that I am trying to understand. It was not enough to repair years of damage, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a sliver of light. I have not responded yet. I am not sure when I will. The therapist I still see says that I get to decide if and when I am ready to re-engage. There is no timeline for healing, no obligation to forgive before I am ready. Derek has not reached out at all. From what Aunt Lorraine tells me, he is still struggling. Still making the same choices, still expecting others to clean up his messes. My mother is still there to catch him when he falls. Some things do not change. But I have changed. That is enough. Last month, Marcus and I went to visit Aunt Lorraine in Florida. We spent a week on the beach eating fresh seafood and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. On our last evening, there I walked down to the water's edge alone. I wore Grandma Helen's silver bracelet, the metal warm from the sun. I thought about her wisdom and her love, about the way she always saw me when no one else did. I thought about Eleanor, the patient who sent me $1,000 because I held her hand when she was scared. I thought about Dorothy and Robert, who embraced me as family before they even met me. I thought about Denise and my colleagues who fundraised and visited and cheered me through recovery. I thought about Marcus, who sold his car without hesitation, who held me through my darkest nights, who chose me and keeps choosing me every day. These people are my family, not by blood, but by choice, not by obligation, but by love. I understand now what Grandma Helen meant when she told me to live for myself. For so long, I thought that meant being independent, not needing anyone handling everything alone. But that is not what she meant at all. Living for yourself means recognizing your own worth. It means surrounding yourself with people who see that worth and reflect it back to you. It means setting boundaries with those who diminish you, even if they share your blood. It means understanding that you deserve love, not because you earned it, but simply because you exist. My mother spent everything she had to save my brother. When I needed help, she turned away. For a long time, I thought that said something about my value. Now I know it only says something about her limitations. I am not angry anymore. Anger takes too much energy, and I have better uses for mine. What I feel is something closer to peace. I accept that my mother loves me in the only way she knows how, even if that way is not enough. I accept that my brother may never see past his own struggles to recognize anyone else's. I accept that the family I was born into is not the family I will build my life around. And I accept that this is okay. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever wondered why your best was never good enough, I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. You are worthy of being seen. You are deserving of love that does not come with conditions or comparisons. And if the people who were supposed to love you first cannot give you that, you have every right to find it elsewhere. Family is not just blood. Family is the people who show up. Family is the hands that reach out when you are falling. Family is the voices that say, I see you. You matter. Go find your family. Build it from scratch if you have to. Fill it with people who choose you, who value you, who would sell their car and send checks from their retirement savings and hold fundraisers and write letters on lavender paper. Those are your people. Those are the ones who count. As I stood on that beach in Florida, watching the sun sink below the horizon, I made a silent promise to Grandma Helen. I will live for myself now. I will love myself the way you loved me. And I will spend the rest of my life being the kind of family to others that I always wished I had. The waves lapped at my feet. The sky blazed with color. And I smiled. I would like to hear from you now. Have you ever felt unseen by your own family? How did you find your way to healing? Leave your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I promise you are not alone. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear these words today. Sometimes the message we need most comes from a stranger who has walked a similar path. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. Whatever you are going through, I hope you find your people. I hope you find your peace. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.